afternoon. It's Tuesday, the 29th of November. I'm Laura Cornfield, and this is IBA News, broadcasting live from Jerusalem. Air raid sirens warning of possible rocket attacks sounded out twice this morning in the southern Golan Heights, sending residents scurrying to shelters, with the Army calling on them to remain indoors. Shortly after investigating, the Army announced the alerts were false alarms, adding to its knowledge no rockets fell inside Israel. Today's sirens covered Israeli communities located not far from the same area where soldiers engaged in a gun battle with the Islamic State-affiliated Khalid ibn al-Walid army positioned on the Syrian side of the border Sunday morning. The confrontation, the first of its kind between soldiers and ISIS elements, led to the army targeting a truck carrying mortar launchers, killing 4 ISIS terrorists, and later an airstrike on an abandoned position the army identified was the base used by the terrorists to attack Israel. Attorney General Avichai Mendelblit has proposed a compromise solution to prevent the court-ordered evacuation of the Omona Settlement outpost. Here with the details and other political news is IBA's reporter Kalev Ben-David. Kalev.
Thanks, Laura. Under Attorney General Avichai Mendelblit's plan, the homes of some 40 families living in Omona would be temporarily moved to a new site on Palestinian land currently held in custody of the state, near to where the settlement outpost is now located. The Supreme Court has ordered Omona, which was built without permits on private Palestinian property, to be evacuated by December 25th. The government is trying to circumvent the court's ruling by passing a law, the Regulations Bill, that would officially recognize Omona and other unauthorized settlement outposts. The bill passed a preliminary Knesset vote 2 weeks ago and may come up for the first of 3 reading votes on Wednesday. But Mandelblit has warned that the law, which would empower the government to expropriate private Palestinian property to build settlements, violates international law and could open up Israeli officials to prosecution in foreign courts. Prime Minister Netanyahu and Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman are reportedly pressing Education Minister and Jewish Home Leader Naftali Bennett, the main backer of the Regulations Bill, to accept Mandelblit's plan. Omona residents today rejected the Attorney General's proposal, saying the only alternatives now are to pass the Regulations Bill or face possibly violent resistance to Omona's evacuation. A group of 120 rabbis from the National Religious Camp have published a letter urging their flock to join with the Omona settlers to resist its evacuation. In other news, the Israel Tax Authority has announced which communities that suffered fire damage in last week's blazes were the victims of nationalistically motivated arson attacks, thus allowing residents to receive direct compensation from the government as victims of terror. The 9 communities cited are Haifa, Zichron Yaakov, Nataf, Tel Al, Dolev, Talmon, Nirit, Gilon, and Chalamish. Residents in other communities will have to seek damage compensation via their insurance companies, although Finance Minister Moshe Kachlon has pledged that he will ensure that all fire victims receive benefits. The government has already provided a 2,500 shekel payment to residents who were forced to flee their homes during the fires. Police have detained 21 suspects on suspicion of arson, of which 6 are Palestinian and the rest Israeli Arabs. Laura?
Kalev, is there any chance that Mendelblit's proposal will be accepted and prevent a violent evacuation at Omona?
Well, there is a chance, Laura, it could be accepted within the government, even by Education Minister Naftali Bennett, who reportedly had made comments, so he didn't rule it out completely, but he first wants to see these temporary homes even put on this alternative site before he even considers it. But it's clear now that the Omona residents themselves will not accept the plan and will not accept any alternative other than remaining where they are. So it looks like we are headed to some kind of resistance at an evacuation. And of course, as we heard, there might be more than the Omona residents, other members of the settler community and their supporters taking part.
Kalev, what about the Regulations Bill? Does it have a chance of passing?
Well, we already know that Finance Minister Moshe Kachlon and his Kulano party, even though they voted for the bill in its preliminary vote, have said they will not accept the bill in its current form because it seems to circumvent the Supreme Court. Prime Minister Netanyahu and Defense Minister Lieberman have not come out outright against the bill, but apparently in private discussions in the Security Cabinet have spoken out very strongly against it in its current form. Lieberman asked Bennett if he wants them to see him and Netanyahu brought before charges at The Hague even. So in its current form, no. It could pass in some kind of amended form, but it looks like at this stage not any kind of form that would prevent the evacuation of Omona.
Kalev Ben David, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
The ultra-Orthodox Shas Party has proposed a bill to criminalize mixed-gender prayer at the Western Wall, making it an offense punishable by 6 months imprisonment. The proposal is a response to the government's decision from January to reach a historic compromise with non-Orthodox streams of Judaism by establishing a permanent egalitarian prayer plaza at the site. The bill now on the docket would effectively overturn the government's earlier decision by prohibiting religious ceremonies that do not conform with local practice as defined by the ultra-Orthodox religious establishment. Women who read from the Torah or don a talit or tefillin could also face a fine of 10,000 shekels or prison. Shas Party Chairman Aryeh Deri is lobbying for coalition support, but is unlikely to receive it. In September, the High Court ordered the Prime Minister to implement the government's resolution. Earlier this month, the Reform and Conservative movements marched on the Western Wall with Torah scrolls to protest the non-implementation of the deal. Both movements sharply condemned the Shas proposal. At the same time, the Jerusalem municipality has approved a major construction project at the Western Wall with the aim of improving access to the site. The plan, which covers 2,500 square meters, includes the excavation of a massive escape tunnel to serve as a protected space during emergencies, as well as an elevator for the disabled. In last month's controversial UNESCO resolution, the UN cultural body declared it deplores the project of the Western Wall elevator and urged Israel to renounce it. All eyes are now on the Kingdom of Jordan, whose approval or acquiescence would be required for the plan to be implemented smoothly. Senior Moels have been sending inexperienced trainees to practice circumcisions on the babies of Israel's most disadvantaged communities, including Ethiopian Jews and foreign workers. A shocking expose by the new Public Broadcasting Corporation catches Rabbi Eliyahu Asulin on hidden camera describing these children as cannon fodder, offering to fast-track a Moel certificate for an undercover reporter by sending him to circumcise them unqualified. "You can make mistakes, I'll fix them, and nobody will know," he explains. The investigation includes testimony from other Moels attesting to more widespread fraud. The chief rabbinate said it views the report's findings with severity if they are true. Agriculture Minister Uri Ariel has launched an ambitious plan to try and solve the massive illegal building by the Negev Bedouin. This with construction of heavily subsidized housing units that is hoped will lead to the demolition of the ramshackle tin shacks spread out in the desert. IBA's Ari O'Sullivan reports.
There have been many attempts to organize the illegal Bedouin settlements in the Negev, Prower, Begin, and now it's the turn of Agricultural Minister Uri Ariel, who is pushing through a 5-year plan to consolidate scores of illegal Bedouin villages into 25,000 dwellings built on state land in 10 recognized towns. The plan calls for an initial allocation of 3 billion shekels from the state budget and another 10 billion from the Israel Lands Authority. The housing would be heavily subsidized or even for free as an incentive to get the Bedouin to move out of their shanty towns and into recognized communities. Minister Ariel says this is not a handout and no one's doing a favor for them, but rather they deserve it as citizens of the state. This is another attempt to come up with a solution to the wanton land grab by Bedouins. About half of the 200,000 Negev Bedouin live in unrecognized villages. They're coming up with a creative way to bypass their problematic land claims and get off the ground with minimum opposition. The new plan calls for the establishment of 2 Bedouin towns, El Fura and Tel Arad, which had been until now unrecognized villages without infrastructures or development plans. However, Bedouin are not content, blasting the plan for another attempt to take away what they claim is their ancestral tribal land in exchange for a house, even if it is linked to the 21st century with education, health, and full infrastructure. Ariel's plan isn't just drawing fire from the Bedouin leadership, but also from inside its own right-wing party. MK Bezalel Smotrich of the Jewish Home Party is pleading with him not to give state land to the Bedouin, which would amount to a prize for lawbreakers. Ari O'Sullivan for IBA News.
The Tel Aviv District Court sentenced Palestinian terrorist Raid Khalil to 2 consecutive life sentences for the murders of Reuven Aviram and Aron Yosiev in a synagogue at the Panorama building in South Tel Aviv last November. At yesterday's hearing, the court imposed an additional 20-year sentence for the attempted murders of 3 other Israelis. Khalil, armed with a knife, went to the 2nd floor of the building where he spotted Aviram and Yosiev gathering at a makeshift synagogue for afternoon prayers. After stabbing them multiple times, worshippers succeeded in blocking Khalil's entry, and as he fled, he attempted to stab 3 other people before he was captured by a passerby and police. Khalil, from Dura near Hebron in the West Bank, had a 30-day residency permit allowing him to enter Israel and was working at a local restaurant when he carried out the attack. In summing up the decision, the court described the punishment a fitting one, saying Khalil would not be permitted to leave jail, see sunlight, or see his family. Under tight security, Fatah convened its 7th General Congress in the West Bank city of Ramallah today, with some 1,400 Fatah delegates electing members for the movement's 2 top leadership bodies, the Central Committee and a Committee Secretary General, as well as members of the Revolutionary Council. The Congress, which opens as the world marks International Solidarity Day with the Palestinian people, is perceived by some as the first of a number of steps towards choosing a successor for 81-year-old Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. In the meantime, Abbas was unanimously re-elected as chairman of Fatah for another 5-year term. The Congress is expected to run for 5 days. Hussam Zamlat, Abbas's advisor for strategic affairs, said the Congress intends to focus on the establishment of an independent Palestinian state and strengthening popular resistance.
This is a very important and crucial Congress for Fatah to reorganize the movement, renew the legitimacy of the leadership of the movement, approving a political plan.
I hope for good, coherent leading bodies, whether it is the first body, the Central Committee, or the second body, the Revolutionary Council. I hope to see some kind of appropriate mix between those who are now in the leading bodies and the new generation, representatives of the new guard, if you wish.
The United Nations is marking the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people 69 years after the Arab League rejected the historic resolution to partition mandatory Palestine. IBA's Elon Aslan-Levy has more.
The United Nations is marking the 69th anniversary of its partition plan for mandatory Palestine with its annual International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people.
The resolution of the Dutch Committee for Palestine was adopted by 33 votes, 13 against, 10 abstentions.
A short time from now, the presidents of the General Assembly and Security Council will address a special meeting by the Committee on the Exercise of the Inalienable Rights of the Palestinian People, and the General Assembly will debate the question of Palestine. The Palestinian mission at the UN is hosting a photographic exhibit on Palestinian embroidery and will stage a dabke dance in the General Assembly lobby. This Solidarity Day has been a fixture on the UN calendar since 1977, but this year, concerns that the question of Palestine is falling off the agenda and that the two-state solution is being rendered increasingly unviable. In a message, outgoing Secretary General Ban Ki-moon warned of a dangerous vacuum within the international community as crises elsewhere claim the attention of world leaders. Writing in the New York Times, former President Jimmy Carter urged President Obama to extend American diplomatic recognition to the state of Palestine before his term expires in January and to help it achieve full United Nations membership. He urged the Security Council to lay out the parameters for resolving the conflict, including a possible UN peacekeeping force to replace Israeli troops. Carter argues such measures are the best and perhaps the only means of countering the one-state reality that Israel is imposing on itself and the Palestinian people. Next year marks 4 historic anniversaries: 100 years since the Balfour Declaration, 70 since the Partition Resolution, 50 since the conquest of the West Bank, and 5 since the United Nations granted Palestine non-member observer state status. So while the UN is officially looking back at 1947 today, all eyes are glued on 2017. Elon Aslan-Levy for IBA News.
Rabbi Colonel Eyal Karim will be the next chief rabbi of the IDF after the Meretz Party withdrew its petition. The left-wing legislators had appealed against the appointment in light of the rabbi's earlier controversial statements, causing the High Court to freeze the designation. But they dropped their objections after the rabbi clarified his remark to their satisfaction and apologized. Rabbi Karim will be sworn in tomorrow, and Chief Justice Miriam Naor wished him success in his new position. A chartered plane crashed Monday night in Colombia outside the city of Medellin, with 76 people of the 81 people aboard the aircraft confirmed dead and 5 reported to have survived. Among the passengers were members of the Brazilian football team, Chapecoense, who were on their way to a match. Aviation authorities have yet to declare a cause for the crash, but the plane, a British Aerospace 146 short-haul carrier, did report an electrical failure before going down. And here at home in travel-related news, the agreement between representatives of El Al's pilots and management aimed at bringing an end to the strike has failed. This despite initial reports suggesting otherwise. While marathon talks to end the labor dispute achieved an agreement, pilots yesterday said some of the understandings reached were not included in the final draft, and nothing has yet been signed. Avi Edry, chairman of the National Transportation Workers Union, said the disagreements are not over salary, but smaller additions made by El Al management that are not acceptable to the pilots. Under the mediation of Histadrut chairman Avi Nissenkorn and Knesset member Eitan Kabel, the discussions are expected to continue today. Residents and visitors alike are invited to the annual Holiday of Holidays happening, or Chag Shel HaChagim, that kicks off this weekend in Haifa. Now in its 23rd year, this combination festival celebrates Hanukkah, Christmas, and Eid al-Adha, reflecting elements of common ground among Haifa's diverse residents of the Jewish, Christian, and Muslim faiths. Live concerts, street fairs, and exchanges of coexistence are all part and parcel of this event. The festivities take place every weekend throughout December in the Wadi Nisnas neighborhood of the northern city. In local money matters, shares were mixed on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange, while the shekel was mixed in foreign currency trading. Here are the numbers. The forecast is calling for another drop in temperatures, with local rain showers predicted across the country. Here are the highs and lows at home and abroad. And that's all for this newscast. We leave you now with footage from the Chula Valley yesterday, where officials claim there were 45,400 Agur cranes. How do they know how many? Well, 7 people stand around the site and count them and claim the number is quite accurate. The all-time record, by the way, is 48,000 Agur cranes. Ari O'Sullivan will be here tomorrow. Until then, I'm Laura Cornfield wishing you a good evening and shalom from Jerusalem.